We're starting Be'ez Hashem Vayoel Moshe Siman Lamed Tes, and we've just discussed how the Rambam, both in Yad Chazaka and Igeres Teimon, says that Mashiach will not, even though he won't be able to, be Mechayim Mesim and change the teva of the world, but he will have powers of Nevuah and be able to tell things supernaturally. So now this Siman is about Ben Koziva, the famous false Mashiach that was in the time of Rabbi Akiva and the Tanaim. So Rav Shamshon Fol Hirsch in his Siddur says that after the Bar Kokhba revolt, Chazal emphasized the Shalosh Shevuos to show that we shouldn't try this again. Mm-hmm. But the Medrash says it wasn't the first time that the Shalosh Shevuos were violated. This is just one of the cases when there were doichik kates, when the Jewish people tried to push for the end before its time. Okay, so take a look. Before we look at the Siman inside, let's take a look at the Rambam. The question here is basically, put it close so we can all see the Rambam. And basically the question is if Ben Koziva was a false Mashiach, but it wasn't so pashut. There were Tanaim who believed in it, or Akiva. Take a look. Al Ya'ale Al Daitcha, Halacha Gimel. Don't think Sha'amelech HaMashiach tzarich la'asos oisos moifsim. We said this last week. I'm just going quickly. Mashiach won't have to do any oisos.
I thought there was no Shiur last week.
What?
I thought there was no Shiur last week.
2 weeks ago.
Shaharei
Rabbi Akiva Chacham Gadol Mechachmei Mishnah. That Rabbi Akiva was a great Chacham from the Chachmei Mishnah, and he followed Ben Koziva. V'hu haya noisei kelev shel Ben Koziva HaMelech, v'hu haya oimer alav shehu Melech HaMashiach. V'dimahu v'chol chachmei doirei shehu HaMelech HaMashiach. The Rambam goes a step further. He says that not only Rabbi Akiva believed in it, but all the Chachamim of the Dor believed in it. We're going to have to see where the Rambam got that from. Okay, then he says, Ad shenerag ba'avonis, until Ben Koziva was killed through their sins. Kivan shenerag noidash lahem she'enoi. Once he was killed, they knew he wasn't Mashiach. The Chacham never asked him for any miracles. So now, the Ravid argues over here. Take a look. Amr Avram, V'haloi ben Koziva.
Where's Ravid? Over here, yeah.
He says, V'haloi ben Koziva haya oimer anahu malka mashicha. The Ravid's quoting now the Gemara Sanhedrin Tzadik Gimel Beis, that it says, Ben Koziva said, I am the Melech HaMashiach. The Chacham sent messengers to test him. If he's able to smell and paskin with his sense of smell or not. And since Ben Koziva couldn't do it, they killed him. So the question is there any machlokes here between the Rambam and the Ravid? And if so, what is it? So basically, we can answer that question already, because we saw in the previous Siman,
even the Rambam held of it, like
Igeres Teimon. So the Rambam didn't argue on this Ravid. So what's going on over here? Why did the Rambam say this and the Ravid reacted to him like this? Okay, so the Kesef Mishnah and the Lechem Mishnah basically learn that there's a machlokes, and the Radbaz learns that there isn't. Take a look. The Kesef Mishnah on the left side of the page.
Highlighted.
Yeah. It says, "V'divrei Ravid emes." The words of the Rabbi are true, and they're from a Gemara. However, there's a medrash that argues on the Gemara. What's this medrash? A medrash in Eicher Rabasi. It's also a Yerushalmi in Tainus. It's basically word for word the same as the medrash. And it says, "B'pasuk bila Hashem b'lei chamal." It's on the pasuk in Eicher. It's in Pitel Beis, pasuk Beis. Bila Hashem b'lei chamal. It says there that Ben Koziva was not killed by the Tanaim, he was killed by the Umas Ha'olam. The Soiver Rabbeinu, and what he leaves out there is that the Yerushalmi and the Medrash say that Rabbi Akiva held he was Melech HaMashiach. The Bavli doesn't say that. So he says, the Soiver Rabbeinu, and the Rambam holds, the Hadi Amru Perek Chelek Asya Doloi Kishmuel. That the Kesef Mishnah is like this. Why did the Rambam not want to paskin like a Gemara? Why did he rather prefer to follow the Medrash and the Yerushalmi? The answer is because there's the machlokes Shmuel and I think Rabbi Yochanan. If in the times of Mashiach there are going to be miracles. Yeah. Shmuel says Ein bein ha'olam hazeh l'moiseh Mashiach el shiv ma'atis b'vad. Rabbi Yochanan says there is, but the Rambam passes like Shmuel,
which is unusual. Rabbi Yochanan, we all know was greater than Shmuel.
Okay, so we're not going to get into now why the Rambam passes like Shmuel, but in Perek Yud Beis he does. So therefore, he holds that in this machlokes, the Yerushalmi and the Bavli about Ben Koziva, that the Bavli says that they didn't believe in him, and the Yerushalmi says they did. The machlokes is dependent on that other machlokes of Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan. He says Shmuel holds the Omer Ein Bein Olam Hazeh Moshe Mashiach El Shiur Malchus. That Shmuel holds there's no difference between Moshe Mashiach except for the fact that we'll have a kingdom, but naturally the world's going to be the same. So if that's the case, then Mashiach doesn't have to do any miracles, doesn't have to smell, and doesn't have to paskin, none of that. And since the Rambam paskin like Shmuel, he didn't want to paskin like the Gemara in Sanhedrin, and says that he does have to smell. He says, "Rabbeinu soiver k'Shmuel u'k'mavur b'perek sha'achar zeh." And the next perek, the Rambam is going to say, "Halacha k'Shmuel," and v'lachein kasav svaras hamedrash. The next page, the word is hamedrash. That's why the Rambam paskin like the medrash. Okay, but as we've seen, the Rambam himself does hold of moirach v'dayin. So this Kesef Mishnah, l'choyer, he didn't see the Igeres Teiman. Okay. We'll take a look down at the bottom, the Lechem Mishnah, also a similar way of approaching it. He says, "Va'ani oimer teretz acher, desham bechelik omra be'Alexandri, de baharichoy eina meloshen reach." That this whole pasuk on which it's based, that the Mashiach has to smell and paskin, is based on the pasuk in Yishai, "Vaharichoy b'yiras Hashem." So there's another Amoyer there who learns it different. He learns that haricho doesn't mean that he'll smell and paskin. Ela meloshen rechaim. It comes from the word a millstone. V'yamru sham shetoyanim yisurim umitzvahs kerechaim. That Mashiach will bear his suffering and his mitzvahs like a grinder. So it has nothing to do with a miraculous ability. Rava is the one who says it comes from the word smell. That's why Rava says that they checked Ben Koziva if he could smell, and they saw he couldn't. But the Rambam holds like Rabbi Alexandri. The Medrash is saying the real story. Rava is just saying it out of his own svar because he holds that Mashiach has to smell. But the Medrash tells the real story of Ben Koziva, and he was killed by the nations. So that shows that he is not required to do that miracle. Okay. Third shot is the Ridvaz. Now the Ridvaz is totally different because he learns that there is no machlokes here between the Rambam and the Ravid. Take a look, or between the Medrash and the Gemara. Ule'inyan ben Koziva ein safek shahaya machlokes bein hachachamim. There's no doubt that there was a machlokes at one point between the Chacham, because by the way, the Medrash does say, and the Yerushalmi does say, that Rabbi Kiva held he was Mashiach, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Terasa said he wasn't. Look on page 2, where I have the Yerushalmi copied here, end of Tainus. It says, Rabbi Kiva kad hava chami bar kozava. When Rabbi Kiva saw Ben Kozava, hava Omer deinhu malka Mashiach. He said, "This is the King Mashiach." Omer le Rabbi Yochanan ben Terasa, Akiva yalu asavim bilchayecha. He said, Akiva, the grass will grow on your chin. V'adayin ben David lo yavai. Before Mashiach comes. Basically,
you have to wait a long time?
You'll have to wait a long time. You'll be dead and buried before he comes.
Grass will grow on your palm or something?
On your chin, on your jaws. Meaning that you'll be in the ground, buried, and grass will be growing upon you.
So Rabbi Yochanan is a Tersa, in some ways he was like greater than Rabbi Kiva? I mean, in the sense
he just argued
saying that. We're just saying that.
But Rabbi Kiva said he was Mashiach, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Tersa said no.
Right.
So in that
he
sense
turned out to be right, but it doesn't mean that Rabbi Kiva was wrong for thinking that. He just turned out that he wasn't. He didn't fulfill the criteria of Mashiach. He tried to be, but he just didn't fulfill it.
But in this sense, Rabbi Yochanan ben Tersa knew more than Rabbi Kiva.
I don't know if say he knew more, but he just he was correct in his prediction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you could have two people predicting something, and one says, "Yeah, it's going to rain today," and the other one says, "It's not going to." And it could be one will turn out to be right. Doesn't mean that he's greater.
Yeah.
All right. So there was a machlokes, up the Ridvaz. Some of them didn't believe in him. Some of them did believe. Rabbi Akiva miklalam. Even after the story in the Gemara and Sanhedrin that they did test him out, right? if he could smell. So the Ritva says no. Even then, Rabbi Kiva maintained that he was Mashiach. Why? So he says, Shema loy ba'alafan of din she'yeh tzarech ladun al yidei harichai. Maybe the pshat is that this was just a test. In other words, if let's say he has this power that when two people come to him for a case, he'll be able to tell who's right with his smell. But if you just test him out, just for a test, he's not going to do it. You just send him somebody. You say, okay, can you tell me if this guy's a Rasha or not? No, can't tell. Right? That's just a test. But when it really comes Lamaisa, then Hashem gives him the koyach to do it. So Rabbi Kiva says, I don't accept your test because there was no actual din Torah that he would have to actually use this power. So therefore, that's not a proof. He says, Shem aloi ba'alafan of din. There was never any din. She'yeh tzarech ladun al yidei arichai. Ad shenerag, until he was killed. So when he was killed, then az nisbar l'chol she'loi ha'yeh Mashiach. Then everybody believed he wasn't Mashiach anymore. Right? They didn't make a movement of, okay, he's going to come back and be Mashiach. Okay, Uma shenir midivrei Raavad, and this that the Raavad says, she'Yisrael harguhu, the Jews killed him, right? The Raavad says that the Chacham killed him after he didn't pass the test. Loi mashma hachi. It's not mashma that that's the pshat in the Gemara, because he doesn't want to make a machlokes between the Gemara and the Medrash, right? And the Yishalmi. Ela hagoyim harguhu. It's the Romans who killed him. And the Bavli says the Chacham killed him. So he says, "V'yesh lefarish hadi amrin beperek chelek even the chazir dolay marich v'dayin katlu kloimar rafu yedehem imenu." He says the Bavli just means that they withdrew their support. Ubau agoyim v'hargu, and then the goyim killed him. Inami agadas chalukosein, or you could say that it is a machlokes between the two sources. What happened to him? Okay, and then just take a look before we see Vayoel Moshe. One more thing. Take a look at page 2, the Yushalmi Tainus. It says the whole story that he had an army and.
Yerushalmi isn't about Yerushalmi. Are you sure?
This is the Yerushalmi, yeah. He had an army and he used to cut off their fingers to show how brave they were. And the Chacham said you can't do that. So instead he had them pull out trees from the ground while they were riding a horse, and he had. It says he had 200,000 people like this and 200,000 who were cut off their fingers. He had a lot of people in his army. So look at the Yushalmi now. The Hava Nafik Likrava. This is the highlighted place. Second highlighted place. When he used to go out to battle, Hava Omar, he would say, Riboine de Alma, Master of the world, Loi Tisoid, don't help me, for Loi Tichsoif, and don't destroy me. Just leave things alone. Like the Korban Oeda says at the bottom, Loi Tichsoif, don't destroy, but Loi Tashti Soisanu, Ela Taniach Hakol Ela Teva. Just let me succeed with my natural power. And then he quoted a pasuk to support himself. He says, Haloya Ato Elokim Znachtanu. You, God, have left us, V'loi Teitze B'tzivoseinu, and you don't go among our armies. Now, why did he say this? So, Rabbi is going to explain it soon, so I'll just wait for that. And then at the end of the story, I'm not going to read it all inside, it's going to take too long, but he says that the Romans understood that as long as Rabbi Lazar HaMoedai was alive, they couldn't conquer the city of Beitar. So what they did was there was a Kusi who decided he's going to help the Romans. So he went in and he whispered something in Rabbi Lazar HaMoedai's ear to make it look like he was conspiring with the Romans. And Ben Koziva asked him, what did the Kusi say? And the Kusi said, and Rabbi Lazar HaMoedai said, I didn't hear him, I don't know what he said, I was busy davening. And Ben Koziva didn't believe him, and he killed Rabbi Lazar HaMoedai, who was his uncle, by the way. And then, once he did that Avera, then he had a downfall. The whole city was conquered, and that was the end of him. And then it says at the end that they found a snake curled around him. And the Roman general said that if not for Hashem killing him, he wouldn't have been able to get killed. He says, just take a look at the second page.
It's a long story?
Yeah, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Just second page of the Yerushalmi, about 10 lines down. It says, Ashkach chachina de krucha alav. He found a snake curled around Ben Koziva. So Amar ilule elakad de katli man hava yachol katli. If not for Hashem killing him, who would have been able to kill him? The Kara alav, he applied the pasuk im like hitzuram mecharam v'Hashem hiskiram. But the goyim wouldn't be able to conquer him unless Hashem had first given him over. Okay. Now let's start the Siman. We're going to see what the Rabbi says about this. That we have to say that even Ben Koziva was also an amazing holy person. If he was considered by Rabbi Akiva to be Mashiach, he must have had all these qualities, right? And he must have been Roy to have Nevuah. He must have had all the qualities the Rambam enumerates about Nevuah. There's a clear proof to this from the Gemara, Sanhedrin Sadi Gimel Beis. Let's see if he's able to smell and paskin. Even Moshe didn't have the madrega of the smelling and paskening, right? So it must be that if they considered him that he could even have a possibility of having this madrega, he must have been on a high madrega already. Okay? If he's not able to have this madrega, how could they have even had a doubt? How do they even have a possible possibility that maybe he had this ability? Yeah. Now, in the Rambam, we remember when the Rambam said that Rabbi Akiva and all the Chachamim thought he was Melech HaMashiach. This could be the makor for the Rambam, because the Gemara is saying that they all thought that he was possible, that you could test him on this madrega. He must have been close to it, yeah. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had a havamina. Gam haloi hechli the Rambam zal gam b'Sefer Hayad. The Rambam also says in the Sefer Hayad, Shamelach HaMashiach Navi Gadol Yoser Mikol Neviim. He's going to be greater than all the Neviim except for Moshe. Ukvar hishlish lon sheyev shalahamin be'echad shehu Navi alayim ken yesh boi kol amidas shechashav huzal. That you can't believe that someone's a Navi unless he first has the things that he says in Hilchos Yisrael Torah, that he has to first be a Kaddish and Parush and everything. So, im kein ha'ech chash v'chacham batchila ben koziva shehu melech HaMashiach im lo yahayi boi kol eilu amidas shiroi l'nevuah. That how could they have even thought that he was Mashiach unless he had all these amazing levels of holiness? Okay. I, Ben Koziva, said this strange statement, Hashem, don't help us. Why would a tzaddik daven Hashem not to help them, right? So he says, Kvar Pirshu, he says the Mefarshim, I don't know which Mefarshim, already say, that when a person doesn't have the ability to succeed with natural powers, but in order to succeed, he needs a nes, he needs a miracle. The hashgacha pratis la'atzilam, he needs Hashem to step in and intervene. Tzarech schusim yoiser, you need more schus, you need more merits to do that. Mashenkin hu chazak b'derech hateva. If Ben Koziva was strong, his army was strong, naturally, then you don't need that kind of schus to win the war. Ela adraba im roitzim la'anshoy min hashamayim tzarech she'yeh pi nes. That if he's going to lose the war, there has to be a miracle. Otherwise, naturally speaking, he would win. So, v'nei yoiser li'natzel. It would be easier for him to win the war. It would take a supernatural intervention to stop him from winning, right? So Ben Koziva understood his generation didn't have the schus to do it with an ace, and also he was powerful. He had a powerful army, right? You see that the Romans had a lot of trouble fighting him. So. In fact, it even says when the Romans came to besiege his city, they didn't want to fight him directly. They were afraid. They'd rather just lay siege to the city until they starved them and basically win the war that way, with patience. They stayed for a couple of years there. So he was a powerful army. So therefore, he said, better that I shouldn't ask for an ace. That's the lashon of the Medrash and the Yerushalmi that we read inside. Don't help and don't hurt us. Just leave us to the teva. That Chazal mentioned a similar character named Bar Duroima, which could be Ben Koziva, we don't know for sure. In Gittin Daf Nun Zayin, it says that there was a warrior named Bar Duroima who said the same pasuk, Haloi Elokim znachtanu, v'lo yiseite Elokim b'sivosenu. Yeah, and Chazal say the lashon ach shalei pume, his mouth tripped him up that he said this pasuk because then Hashem didn't help him and he lost. Okay, shaloi amroi bekavana. So we see from this that it was a mistake. He didn't mean it on purpose to tell Hashem not to help him. El nichshal b'piv. It was just a mistake that he made. So he was really a tzaddik. This bar droima, maybe it's bar kochba, not, I don't know. It says v'loy k'moy sheyesh toin bazeh sh'lohem min chas l'shalom b'hashgacha. It's not like some people think that bar droima and ben koziva didn't believe in Hashem's help. No, they believed in it, but they were saying it as a request, to succeed with teva, not with nisim. Okay.
Yeah.
Gam b'nei doirei. Now back to the question of Bar Kochba being a tzaddik. He says the people of his generation also hayu as tzaddikim gemurim. V'lo matzu chachamim zal b'hem shum chet. Chazal didn't find any chet in the generation of Ben Koziva. El azeh shaloi hayu misablim al Yerushalayim. The fact that they didn't mourn for Yerushalayim. Now, where this comes from, I don't know for sure. In Gittin Daf Nun Zayin, there's a couple of stories there about a certain city called Kfar Sechania, and it says that they were tzaddikim, and then the Gemara asks if they were such tzaddikim, then why were they destroyed? And it says because they were not misabel al Yerushalayim. But this is a different city. This is not Ben Koziva, I don't think. Now, the other possible source is in the Yerushalmi that we just have open here, page 3. Look at the highlighted part, middle of the page, page 3. Take that away. Yeah, this. Tani Rabbi Yossi Omer Nun Beis Shana Asa Beitar le'achar Churban Beis Hamikdash. Beitar continued to exist for 52 years after the Churban Beis Hamikdash. V'lama Charba, and why did it get destroyed? Al shehidlika neiros le'achar Churban Beis Hamikdash, because they lit neiros, celebrating that the Yerushalayim was destroyed. It's not just that they weren't misabel; they were actually happy that Yerushalayim got destroyed. So it says, "V'lama."
Why were they in the right mind to it?
So look. Continue it with the Yerushalmi. V'lama hidlika neiros. And by the way, this is all in the Medrash too. Medrash Rabban Eicha. V'lama hilika neiros shahayu balyute Yerushalayim yoshvim be'emtza Medina. He says that when Yerushalayim stood, there used to be rich merchants in Yerushalayim.
Does baliti mean?
What? I think it means rich merchants. Look at all these hard words are explained in the Pirush on the side. I'm just trying to go fast here. When they used to see a person from Beitar, from a different city, coming to Yerushalayim, they said to him, "Begin the shmoinin Allah the atboy misavda ar chintas ubulbutas." I think this means that they said, "Do you want to become a?" They got into a conversation with him. They said, "Do you want to become a chashuv person over here? Do you want to have a job here?" For who amar loin leis bedaite, he would say no, because he just came to do his business and go back. Bedil deshmoyin Allah de'at boy mezabna usia dilach. We heard that you want to sell your field. For who amar loin leis bedaite, he says, "I don't want to sell it." For hava chavre amar le ma'at boy min dein kasuv. He would say, "What do you want to do with this piece of paper here?" Basically, he would get him into a conversation, and while he was talking, he would trick him into selling his field. He would have somebody else come and sign the document and pretend that he bought the field from him, and the guy would go back and he would send messengers to the Beitar and tell him, I bought this guy's field, and they would make false documents. So basically, they hated the people from Yerushalayim because there were these rich people in Yerushalayim who used to do this. They used to steal fields from the people of Beitar. All right, but anyway, they weren't so sad when Yerushalayim was destroyed. So that's because that's one of the reasons why Ben Koziva's movement failed. All right. So B'kitzer, the Rebbe is saying that they didn't find any chet except for this. Chazal only say this is the only chet they did. Okay. Sorry, back in Back in Vayoel Moshe, yeah, the bottom of the column here on Siman Lamed Tes. Okay, it could be except for this chet. If not for this chet, that they would have been on the level that they could be zoicha to an early redemption, because there's a pasuk be'ita achishena. In its time I will hasten it. So the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Zachu be'ita, lo zachu be'ita. If the Yidden aren't worthy of it, then they'll get Mashiach in its time, and by the deadline, right? But zachu, if they were zaycha to have an early coming of Mashiach, achishena, I'll hasten it. I'll make it come faster. Okay?
Yeah.
So it could be Ben Kuziva was only about 50, 60 years after the Churban. Maybe they would have been right, even though that really wasn't the time for B'yis HaMashiach. But if they were on such a high madrega, he would have come then. Okay, so V'haya az mitzias le'geula. So therefore there was a possibility of having a geula then. Aval machmas shahaya chet b'neiam, because there was this one chet that they didn't mourn for Yerushalayim. Lo yahaya zman muchsha liyos achishena. It wasn't the right time to be a early redemption. So since it wasn't the right time for Mashiach, so it comes out that it was a false Mashiach movement, and it was the chikas haketz, it was forcing the end. So that's why the end of Ben Kuziva's movement was a tremendous slaughter.
So all it was, so Ben Kuziva was a big tzaddik, because we all know, after a big Tanaim fight with Mashiach, but the mistake was, he lacked the proper veil for Yerushalayim.
He or his people.
Or his people, one or the other. So I guess you see from here that there is no way, and Adar, I think, fortunately, the end shows there is no veils. For the end, Dafka shows how there is no veils. How you're going to pridefully do by yourself, not admit you're an Avel who's helpless on his own.
Right, but Yerushalmi is not saying that the way we know that they were not mistabel is because of this whole movement. It say that. It says because
it was not the veils.
They were just they stopped, didn't feel so sad. Rebbe says, when I was by the caver of Rabbi Kiva, Kishayisi B'Kayit Sazeh, Tafshin Yud Tes. Vayoel Moshe first came out at around Rosh Hashanah Tafshin Chaf, 1959. Starts Tafshin Chaf.
Yeah.
End of the summer. So during that summer of 1959, the Rebbe made one of his trips to Yerushalayim and to Eretz Yisrael, and he went to Rabbi Kiva's caver. So he says, "Kishayisi B'Kayit says that Tafshin Yates B'Tveria, Ola B'Daiti Ezerayim L'Taretz Divrei Rabbi Kiva." So being on Rabbi Kiva's caver, he had an idea how to answer up Rabbi Kiva. Shalai Ta, that it wasn't a mistake with Ben Kuziva. Elohaya Siba Gedola Min Hashemayim Lidrosh Az Kain. That there was Hashem caused Rabbi Kiva to have this thought that Ben Kuziva was Mashiach. And I thought of a good reason for it. I don't want to say it now. I don't want to go on with it at length. And if you want to know what it is, flip to page 4. Divrei Yoel.
On the parsha.
Right.
Yeah.
He said it over, I guess, a different time, so they put it in Divrei Yoel. He says, "V'chashavti l'taretz divrei Rabbi Kiva shaloi ta." Rabbi Kiva didn't make a mistake. Elohaisa siba gedola min hashamayim sheyidrash alav svuchim min haTorah. There was a good reason why min hashamayim Hashem made that Rabbi Kiva had this drasha, because he says, "V'hayadaitoi al pi haTorah lahachzik oisei l'mashiach." He had support from the Torah to believe in him as a Mashiach. The al pi halacha he was qualified to be Mashiach. Kamasha Chesavti b'Sifri Vayoel Moshe Maamar Aleph Siman Lamed Ches, that he fit the bill to be Mashiach. Shemelech HaMashiach tzarich sheyeh boy madregas navi, v'navi tzarich sheyitin oisim moifis, Kamasha Kosav Rambam Zal. So v'al korchach tzarich loymer shenis nase b'oisim moifis. It must be that he did pass the test. He did have a miracle, a future, telling the future. V'hayu boy kol amidas shemuchrach liyos b'navi. He had all the qualities that a navi has to have. Basically, his word is that because Rabbi Kiva believed in Ben Kuziva, it was a little bit of like a limud zchus on Klal Yisrael that they were following him. Because if not for Rabbi Kiva, if no Tana and if no one supported him, no Talmud Chacham supported him, then there would have been a bigger destruction, because Hashem would have been more angry at Yidden for following a false Mashiach. Now Hashem made that one of the Tanaim followed him to show, to give a little bit of a limud zchus. He says, there was it was minimized the destruction that came out of this movement. Hashem's anger was not complete. Even though there was a great churban afterwards, the Nergu Revavos Israel, many tens of thousands were killed. V'nigda keren Yisrael k'mashkasim Yerushalmi Tainis Perek Daled Mikom Lakum Hayektas Hamtaka V'Yisnatzlis Neged Acharoy Nach V'Hamakatreg. There was a little bit of an excuse in Bezdin Shalmaila L'Hakal K'tas Migzeres HaChurban Al Kihaya Beheskim Lo'Iras Rabbi Kiva. Because Rabbi Kiva agreed to it, so it was a limud schus. V'koyach terasas Rabbi Kiva Amad Neged Hamakatreg. Rabbi Kiva's Torah was able to stand up against the Satan in Bezdin Shalmaila and minimize the punishment. Okay?
Yeah.
That's why we were left with a lot of tzaddikim after the war was over. Even though a lot of people died, but there was still something left.
Yeah.
Okay, now, Sefer Vayoel Moshe. The emes ein iton yodea ad ma. Nobody knows the real story here. The ways of the Tanoim HaKadoshim are very deep, and we don't know. We can't really understand. We can't judge them. But what we do know is that Chazal say it was a big tragedy. And it was a mistake of forcing the end. Now Rabbi Kiva had a right to believe what he believed, but in the end it turned out to be a mistake. The maskana of the Gemara in Sanhedrin is that the Rabbanan killed him. And we saw already the Ridvaz says that they withdrew their support. So therefore, if even such a qualified Mashiach like Ben Kuziva was a tragedy, so we, who don't know anything, we're not even close to that level, we have to run away from any type of step that could lead to Dechikas HaKetz. So, you have to run away from this kind of Dechikas HaKetz even more than a lion. It's coming to kill you. Hashem Yisbarach Yirachim Aleinu V'Yal Kol Yisrael Hashem She'av Rachmanas on us V'Yishlach Lanu Goel Tzedek B'Mheir V'Yameinu Amen. Should send us the true Mashiach. Now, in the original Vayoel Moshe, I think this was the end of a Siman. That's why he ended off this way. The Siman Lam Ches went until here, and then this paragraph was Lamed Tes, and now he switched it around. Take a look. The Ridvaz says that we saw inside that Rabbi Kiva didn't retract his opinion because there was no actual din. So like we said, Ben Kuziva didn't actually have a test. He didn't agree with the test. So we see there was no machlokes Yerushalmi against the Bavli. Everybody agrees that Melech HaMashiach will have to smell and paskin. You have to say this difficult teretz that there was no actual din Torah. It's a very big doichik to say, very unlikely to say that there was no such din. Since the rest of the Chacham did check him, how could Rabbi Kiva not have known of this? And if you're going to say he knew about it, but he didn't think it was a valid test, it's a big doichik. It sounds like the Ridvaz was not so sure that Rabbi Kiva was chayzer or not. Okay? I mean, look at the Ridvaz again. He says, Loi chayzer by Rabbi Kiva. I don't see where the Rabbi saw that he was Mesupik. He's not sure.
Right.
Anyway, so now he says, Omnam b'Sefer Yuchsin l'Morenu Avram Zchus. This is a very interesting Sefer. I have a copy here on the last page.
Yuchsin,
Sefer Yuchsin. This Rabbi Avram Zchus was an astronomical advisor to the king of Portugal around the time of the Inquisition. He lived in Spain first, then he moved to Portugal.
This is Zakuto?
Yeah. Rabbi Avram Zakuto.
Zakuto,
and we call him Zechus because Ashkenaz pronunciation. But basically, he was a Talmid Chacham, a brilliant person, and an astronomer. He's the one who invented the astrolabe that people use on boats to tell where they are. And Columbus and Vasco da Gama used his charts to navigate. There's even a story about Columbus that he met some Indians and they wanted to kill him, and he said he looked in the chart that Rabbi Avraham Schus made, and he saw there was going to be an eclipse today. So he told the Indians, if you don't listen to me, I'm going to make the sun disappear. And then they after he did it, there was an eclipse, and then they believed him. It was a famous folk tale. I don't know if it's true, but the point is that these people, the Spanish and the Portuguese, were using his discoveries. Okay, so after the Inquisition in Portugal, he ran away from Portugal and he went to Africa, and eventually he came to, I think, Yerushalayim. So when he wrote this Sefer, that was after the Inquisition. And this Sefer, he talks about basically the history of the world from Bris Ha'olam until his time. And he goes through every Tana and every Amoira and tells, collects from Shas all the facts about him. So he says here, just look at Vayoel Moshe first. He says, "Alna b'sefer yuchsim l'mereinu Rams Chusal b'Maamar Aleph Eitzel Rabbi Kiva Kasav behedya shegam Rabbi Kiva Akar sheruahu shaloi hayim meriach harashaim." After Rabbi Kiva saw that Ben Koziva couldn't smell a rasha, nisyayish heimenu, he gave up on him. The cost of shezeh sharish gadol b'inyan Mashiach. This is a very important principle of Mashiach.
So Mashiach could tell us how was rasha by smelling.
Yeah. It's not just a matter of a din Torah. It sounds like it's
by tzaddik or rasha.
Right.
Wow.
Take a look inside now. Sefer Yuchsin. Move it over here so you can see it. Yeah. Sefer Yuchsin. V'Omar Harambam Zal v'Soif Mishpatim. The Rambam says here, it's really Shoiftim, but he calls it Mishpatim. He says, Ki haya noisei kelav shal Ben Koziva. That Rabbi Akiva was a supporter, was a follower of Ben Koziva Melech Beitar, the king of Beitar. Shechashav shahaya Mashiach. He thought he was Mashiach. Aval b'midrashos loy matzu shahaya noisei kelav. We don't find in the Medrash that Rabbi Akiva actually carried his kelim and actually was a servant of Ben Koziva. El ba'avur shahaya mishevet Yehuda. Because Ben Koziva came from Shevet Yehuda, because he was succeeding in his wars, that's why Rabbi Akiva thought he was a Mashiach. The Darach Koich of Miyakov. Rabbi Akiva darshan in the pasuk, Darach Koich of Miyakov. That he called him Bar Kochba because of that. But once Rabbi Akiva saw that he couldn't smell the Rishaim, he gave up on him. This is an important thing against the Goyim. I guess he means against the Christians.
Yes,
that we have a test. We have criteria for Mashiach.
In Spain, the Inquisition, the whole thing was to require everyone to be a Christian or get out.
Right, and in Portugal, they didn't even give them the chance to get out. That's the amazing thing.
They were killing them out in Portugal?
They killed them. They said, just stay and convert or else we'll kill you. Only certain people, like Rabbi Avraham Schus, because he had a high position,
Portugal?
he was able to flee from Portugal. Yeah, but the rest of the Jews, they were unfortunately either forced to convert or die. So, especially the children. So he says here that he gave up on him. So basically the Machlokes, the Radvaz, and the Rabbi Avraham Schus, whether Rabbi Akiva changed his mind. Gam b'divrei Marsha Sanhedrin Sadi Gimel is also the Marsha is on the side of Rabbi Avraham Schus. Shekasav Shagam Rabbi Akiva Toa Boy Batchila. He says Rabbi Akiva also originally made a mistake about him. So it's mashma that he changed his mind. He says Mizeh mashma Shagam Hu Loi Toa Bozeh Elam Mitchila. It was only an original mistake. Aval Shuv Chazer Boy. But in the end he changed his mind. Ulepela be'enai. Masha alecha Mishnah oisa plukta im tzarich liyos marich v'dayin. It's so we saw at the beginning of this year that the Lechem Mishnah said that it's a machlokes, the Rambam and the Ravid, whether he has to smell on Paskin. So the Rebbe says that that's unbelievable that the Lechem Mishnah thinks that it's a machlokes, and the Kesef Mishnah by the way too. Im tzarich liyos marich v'dayin ukefia nira loy haya loy yigeres teman. The Lechem Mishnah and the Kesef Mishnah didn't see the Sigeres Teman, that the Rambam himself says it. Yeah, even the Rambam agrees that he has to smell in Paskin. Both the Radvaz and the Avraham Schus agree that there was no machlokes about Morech V'dayin. They just disagree about whether Rabbi Akiva changed his mind. Gam lefi divrei Alecha Mishnah al kapanim benevua mevur gam b'sefer Yad shetzarich liyos karav l'Moshe Rabbeinu olav shalom. He says even the Lechem Mishnah, who says that the Rambam holds that you don't have to smell, but he agrees that Mashiach still has to be a Navi, close to the level of Moshe. I'm going to speak more about this Machlokes Rambam and Ravid. I'm going to speak more about the Kesef Mishnah and the Lechem Mishnah. So everyone basically agrees that Mashiach is going to have to be a Navi, and this Lechem Mishnah and Kesef Mishnah, because they didn't have the benefit of the Igeres Teman, they held that he doesn't even have to have the smell and Paskin test. But basically, that we saw that the Rambam does hold of that, and the Ravid, and that basically everyone agrees on that. Okay? Okay, shkach.